All right, welcome to the channel for the first time viewers. Welcome back for my existing subscribers. Today I'm going to talk through which one of my three CPUs I would recommend and who I'd recommend them for. So first, I have my 9950X3D. Got the 78 or 9800X3D. And then last but not least, we have the now aging 14900KS. You're gonna have to excuse the lighting. It's kind of wild up there. But yeah, so let's start with the 9800X3D, who I think is for and who I think will benefit the most from this chip. Now, it's an 8-core, 16-thread chip with 3D V-cache on the entire die. So what I like about it is, again, there's no messing around. You don't really have to get into the BIOS. You can literally be the most novice of PC builders, drop the CPU into your motherboard, and you're off to the races, right? So there's not really much that you need to do with that CPU. It's also the best gaming performance. There are some cases where, very rare cases that the Intel chip wins, but even more rare where, not even more rare, that's the wrong way. It's rare, but you can see the 9950X3D winning in certain situations. And then it is more rare to see the 14900KS winning. I don't recommend anybody go out and get the 14900KS. I just don't recommend it. It's not worth the price premium. You need a really good board. You need a fantastic cooling system. I barely have enough to cool it, so I don't really recommend that one. But for the 9800X3D, the biggest pro is that plug and play compatibility. With the X3D chips, it doesn't really matter what kind of RAM you use. So you could use $80, $90 Best Buy RAM. And as long as it's just halfway decent, and you didn't get like the bottom of the barrel where it's like 5600 C38, that type of RAM, then you should get good performance. Maybe it won't be top notch, but you'll be within, I'd say 85% of getting really the top performance with that chip. Let's talk about the 9950X3D. Now this chip, I think, is going to be for those people that are creators, that want more cores, that really, price-wise, they just want the highest end of the spectrum as far as when it comes to AM5, right? So they don't really care about the price. They're just like, what's the best AM5 CPU? What's the most expensive one, essentially, is what they're asking. So that's for that person or the creator that needs a lot of cores. I will say that for the gaming perspective of it, I had a very rocky start, and I was regretting listing and selling my 7950X3D. So I sold that to get my 9950X3D. But again, the downside to it was the cores didn't respect process lasso. So for those of you that aren't too familiar, there's a program that you can tell anything that you're running on your computer to run on specific cores. And with the 9950X3D, it has 16 cores and 32 threads. So out of those 16 cores, only 8 of them have the 3D V-cache. Whereas on the 9800X3D, the reason it's pick up and play and you don't have to worry about messing around is because it's all one type of setup, right? It's one type of core. Whereas on the 9950X3D, you have 8 cores that are meant to go fast and 8 cores that are meant to use the 3D V-cache to go fast in programs that use cache, like games, right? And so sometimes, especially in games like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, I was having the game, instead of running on the V-cache cores, it would bounce over to the frequency cores. And with the 5090, I was seeing upwards to like 100 FPS loss. So I knew something was up from the beginning. I was like, there ain't no way. I got to figure it out. I figured out the BIOS tweak. I changed a couple settings. I'll link it in the description of this video. But once I changed that made it so that it was a lot more usable and a lot less frustrating. So that has been my go-to chip for me. Now, I'm a little bit more advanced. I'm not the most advanced with the know-all for CPUs, but at the same time, I knew enough to fix it. I knew where to dabble. I knew to save a profile and tweak the BIOS the way I would like. All of the prefer cache options, the CPPC, none of that worked. But just saw that one setting where you can load up the X3D profile, and then I saw a couple different numbers, so I played with those. And there's supposed to be different scenarios where the program or the workload goes on a different course. And see how complicated this explanation is for the 9950X3D. So that's should tell you something in itself. But overall, fantastic gaming performance when you have it running right. Even better when it comes to running Windows, because you got 16 cores and everything that's really CPU heavy. Even though, I prefer everything run on the cache CCD, because I'll take the performance hit on productivity versus the performance hit on games, right? So that's how I have my setup. Next, we're going to talk about the 14900KS. This is interchangeable for the 13900K or 14900K. Of all of the CPUs, I'd probably say the 13900K will probably be the best of the group to get, because it clocks almost as high. And I didn't really see a big difference when I went from 13 to 14900K. And I don't even run the KS at 6 gigahertz, right? You need water cooling for that. I'm using a 360 AIO, and I'm still hitting 70C when playing Call of Duty and a lot of other games. Battlefield, those CPU intensive games, those Frostbite engine games on Intel CPUs, for some reason, they just love to use power. So I'll be at like 200 watts and running at like 78C, which I can't stand to be over. I can't even stand to be over 60C. But aside from that, for everyday use, if you're the type of person that you can get it really inexpensive, let's say, for instance, $275, $300, then that might be a worthwhile investment. Keep in mind, they did have that issue with the pretty much the CPU burning itself out over time, because the frequencies were too high, the power draw was too high, and that's just an Intel 13th, 14th gen issue. If you have somebody that set the clocks automatically by themselves, or if you get one brand new, then that's worthwhile visit. So if you're not really chasing the best experience, but maybe you play at 4K and you want something that's really good, or you're using an older GPU that the 14900K or the 13900K could really push, like the 3090 Ti, the 4070 Super. I would say everything all the way up until the 4090 was fine with the 14900KS. 5080, I'm struggling with it right now when it comes to Call of Duty. If I play the GPU intensive games, your CPU won't really matter too much. And that's why you see people that play at like ultra settings. They tell you things like, oh, there's no difference between a 7700X and back then the 7800X 3D. But if you play a game like Call of Duty, those would be the same people with the 1440p low settings that are getting like 180 FPS. Meanwhile, the same exact setup with a 7800X 3D was getting like 300 FPS, but they didn't really care because, it's just, that's not something they care about. They typically play with max settings. So that's kind of where I kind of draw the line. And for me, I like to have the best of both worlds. So having all that said, that was kind of like the highs of all three, right? Overall, if you were only going to get one, if you're more techie, then I would say the 9950X 3D, because the platform isn't dead yet. I can't really recommend any of the Intel because all of it is a dead platform, and the Core Ultra has been a failure. So there's that. I can't really recommend that. But the 9800X 3D is a great transition CPU for those wanting just the best gaming performance. They do a little bit of video editing. I could do all those things on that CPU. I was doing all those things on that CPU. It was a little bit slower, and it was definitely certain things were more noticeable. Navigating windows with multiple things open, that was more noticeable on the 9950X 3D. As soon as I dropped it in, because I did fresh install, dropped it in, I was like, oh yeah, this is way faster. But if I didn't have one, I couldn't compare, it'd be fine. So all that to say, if you're building a console-like experience, maybe you play games like Madden, maybe you play games like Call of Duty, and you're a 2-3 game on console guy and you want to go experience those games on PC, then the 9800X 3D is probably going to be your best bet. If you're more looking for that powerhouse, then you want to go to 9950X 3D. Like I said, can't really recommend the Intel platform. It's dead, right? So the 12900K, 13900K, 14900K, 14900KS, that has run its course. I don't even know if there's going to be another like a 385K on the same board. I think they might use the same board, but I remember reading something that they weren't going to use it. which I think is crazy because it just came out. So I feel like it's a wasted an investment. So with that said, I would say stacking in order, for me at least, 9950 X3D, 9800 X3D. And then if you get a really good deal on an Intel platform, you're not the type of person to upgrade, you get a CPU or you're running at 4K, then 14900K and then 13900K would be the way to go. Skip the 14900K altogether. Even if you get a good, I mean, it's just not worth it because it just pulls too much heat. It requires extreme cooling, and it's really, I don't know, it wasn't worth it in my opinion. So hopefully this helps me out when it comes to the CPU. I'll make another video similar to this, but really focus on the GPUs between the 9070 XT, the 7900 XTX, and the 5080 and 5090. So which one of the 4 GPUs I think is more ideal for everyday gaming. So I'll catch you on the flip. Easy.